Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Alpine Odyssey, where we get to try and speed build our way through this final little section of the ticket booth area. So these are going to be the final left and right winged buildings that are in the front plaza area. We did start some of this on yesterday's live stream. I hope you guys enjoyed that, those who came. It's always fun to get your feedback live and hang out. I would like to thank you guys for coming, of course, and we do live stream every Sunday around 11:30 Eastern Time. So mark that on your calendar if you want to go and see me build stuff live at a slower pace than what you're seeing now. But currently, what we're doing is basically copying the same tile set from the first building. We have modified it a little bit in terms of color palette. A darker wood with a stone back instead of a plaster back. And the upper story is going to be the actual normal full dark wood upper. Now, there is very similar aspects to all of these buildings, and I wanted to keep it that way. I didn't want to do anything drastically different going from the left or the right. I just wanted the color to basically be the main shift in tone, and that way it looks, you know, like they belong together, and they also look similar yet unique enough so they can be differentiated from the left and the right side. So we get basically gray boxed out shapes that what I'm doing is I'm recreating that to the right of those gray shapes very quickly using the tile set to provide us with an interesting rough shape. Now, you don't have to necessarily adhere 100% to your gray boxes as you kind of plan out your design. Things can change easily enough. You don't have to be exact on the first go. And you can see even now I am going back in, adding details that I missed in the base tile set, even kind of adhering to some of the design decisions that kind of shown itself upon actual assembly. And we just get to try and fill in some gaps here and try to just seal up these two buildings so they look like they belong, at least somewhat connected there. Now, this is the ticket booth area, and I assume the interior would be kind of housing a lot of people and possibly their loose supplies. You know, you're gonna have some staff rooms in here, things like that. We're not gonna do the interior because it's a mess on the inside. There's a lot of part clipping going on, and we're not going to have any modern aspects on this building, simply due to the fact that because the ticket booth, you see the front and the back side, there's no real good place to really hide those backstage areas. So we're gonna keep it all themed and decorated. There will be more backstage areas probably along the backs of shops and areas where people won't be walking around. But anywhere I think the peeps are going to be pathing around. You can see the path connecting from the right ticket booth over towards the main road. That is going to be detailed out to the best of our ability. Now, there might be some areas where some modern day stuff gets poking through, especially the bus station and the stark kind of clash of those two themes. At this point, we're going to move into the left building. The left building was a little bit of a challenge. It ended up being difficult to think of another variation to do. So initially I thought, well, maybe we'll just do a different roof color. So I found that nice blue that we've been using a lot throughout the parking lot and the toll area. So we colored the roof blue, and then I was thinking, well, maybe we can do a smooth kind of stone blue wall work here, just so there's some actual color. End up not really liking this in general, so do just try and pay attention to the overall, I guess, layout of the boards and miscellaneous details that's attached to the tile set, because we'll be changing the color of this later on and making it look a little bit more rustic. This just looks probably too, I guess, too French deco than everything else. So I decided against the teals, except for the roof. The roof, I just liked it for that, so we'll keep it there. But we wanted some variety for the front door, so we did add a little bit of a overhang on that. We're not gonna end up using it, simply due to how I designed the building and lay it out later on. But it's pretty cool to have a tile set that incorporates things where you can edit them on the fly. It's super important. So we're gonna do the same thing as the previous building. We're gonna start kind of just placing our tiles down, editing it as we kind of place it, realizing that there's just too many vertical beams on this thing. It's just detail overload, and so we're gonna have to space that out, kind of trim that down, make it look a little bit more smooth and transitioning well. Here we got rid of that little shelter over the door just because this is going to be in a covered area, so there's really no point in that being there at all. And then we move on to the roofing, and the roofing, of course, being super important because it is one of the biggest silhouette pieces to most, if not many, structures. And the roof line, having a height variant from the left and the right, and the middle being taller. It's a very cottage-like effect. We're also going to keep that wooden upper floor, and then we're gonna bump out one side of it so we can get a little bit of an overhang going. It is good to try and mix up variety like that. I don't quite know what's gonna be under the overhang, but we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. A lot of this kind of initial building phase is going to be setting up the theme for the rest of the area. The first area, of course, being kind of this Alpine Northern European theme set. So that's what we're doing now. There's still a lot of detail we're going to be going into, so don't worry about necessarily all the nitty-gritty just yet. These episodes are going to be many and quite long. We have a long build ahead of us. The parking lot was just a fraction of what we're going to be doing. If I can spend a month on a parking lot, let me tell you, I can spend a month on just the front plaza. So we will definitely get there. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, especially when I start trying to introduce interiors of buildings. It's going to definitely slow us down a great deal, but it's definitely going to be worth it. So right now we are coloring the stone a different color. We're going to go with an opposite effect from the other tower where the stone is light and the wood is dark. This one we're going to go with a dark stone and light wood just to make it look different. And the tower is also in a different location, and we'll also have a different spire, which is actually the thing that took the longest in today's build. It took me about 45-50 minutes to put this thing together. So I hope you guys are excited to learn how to do an interesting shape, something different in terms of a spire. So at this point, we get to remove that smooth kind of teal color, and we're just going to replace it with some wooden slates. Now, the wooden elements, I really like this just because it makes it look a little bit more of an Alpine feel rather than something in kind of the upper districts of France. So it does, I think, lend itself to the theme a little bit better than what we were going with, even adding somewhat of, maybe it's a little too much wood. I'll let you guys decide on this one. I'm not quite 100% happy with this, but sometimes you just have to build it, and then at that point you can edit it later, and we just had to keep kind of plugging along. If I sat there and got discouraged over a not quite successful build, we would never get this thing done. So much rather keep pressing on so you guys can get some content and I get your guys' feedback, because to me that's the most important thing about doing YouTube, is getting that feedback so we can make something better and learn from mistakes such as color palette just being bad in general. So this little jut, we get a little bit of a lower roof line. Again, we are trying to create all those little tiers and change these elements, and then we move this building into place. It does look a little weird initially, and I'm not sure why, and then I realized the gray box is actually having some elements that we aren't adding on to there just yet. So it is there's some gaps to fill, a little bit of stitching to do, and there is that really awkward corner between these two buildings that we'll have to go into. I don't know if I cover this in the speed build or not, but it's essentially just a hand-stitched roof. We kind of cover that kind of stuff in the core build plenty already, so I don't feel like you guys need to see that yet again. More of this teal color just tying in to the roof line, and then everything else is just that nice wooden color. And at this point, we will be moving on to that kind of spire that I want to do on that left stone tower here. So we're going to start with a flat base. This is of course exactly how wide it needs to hook onto, and then we're going to start with the base outline. This is going to be the silhouette shape of your little spire. Now these custom spires, they take a long time to do, and if you want crazy spires with a bunch of juts, which is what I wanted, it's going to take even longer. So it's a very stepped kind of style. It's going to have 3, maybe even 4, I think. Hold on, let's take a look. I think it's just 3 roof tiles here, but since it's such a small area, it is pretty tough to get this lined up. We're going with a square base because that is kind of the easiest to do. You can do a rounded element. You just need to add more of these points to connect this to, and you could actually make this a rounded tower. But to me, these guys do a little bit more of a square dome because they kind of lost the technology a little bit for those rounded domes, and it's made out of wood, so wood not that great for making a rounded dome in general. So we do end up adding this little awkward corner. I did want the corners to kind of come down a little bit, make it really look like it's hugging the edges of the building, and then we will shingle it. The shingles take a bunch of time. I am offsetting them. I am trying to make this as smooth and flush as possible, and you really want those shadows to appear in between each layer that you are working on. This really awkward corner gives me a bunch of trouble initially. When you get into such an interesting shape, it becomes a bit of a pain to work on, but with enough fendangling, you can kind of get things to work for you without it looking too terrible in that little spot, and at least continues the theme a little bit there. At this point, we'll just go ahead and bring in some vertical brown wooden elements, and with the brown wood we are going to color all the spines brown as well, so that there is that color shift from the shingles to the actual supporting frame of this dome. To me, that's important to do. It creates a nice visual break between the two elements, and then we will continue working on the rough shape. Luckily, we only have to build a quarter of this by hand, and once you have that, you're very easily able to copy and paste it and rotate it into place, and you'll have yourself a perfectly square tower top. We did cover this a little bit on the live stream on the other tower across the way, and those who have trouble making custom towers, definitely I understand that. Silver has a great tutorial on how to do these. He goes much slower than I am explaining it. I'm kind of giving you the quick version, but if you want to really see the correct way to do these, go watch Silverette's video, because I'm just not going to go into this in a very slow manner. We don't have time. We have to continue work and in a very speedy, sped up way. So we are on the second tier now, and you can see we are doing just all these little fine adjustments, making sure all these things line up smoothly and nicely, and this will provide if you take a lot of time with these things, these minor details, it's really what sells a building sometimes, is these smaller, these intricate things that might be able to salvage something that's not looking too good. because it has such a unique feature atop and adorning it. So here is the final little tier going in there, and luckily the wooden shingles are such a small piece that we can use this in such a tight corridor to get this all detailed out. And now at this point we can copy it over. You can see it looks a little Asian in nature, but it also looks slightly Russian at the same time, so it does match the theme, I think, nicely, and I think it adds that interesting appeal to this left building. So at this point we're pretty much done with today's speed build. We'll add a little bit of a clock and a little bit of a backdrop to that so it stands out a little bit more, makes it look a little bit more grounded. And then at this point we're just going to go ahead, hop into real time, and you guys can take a look. So here we are taking a look at kind of the finished front plaza. There's still detail that I want to add, from marking where the ticket windows are, possibly the ticket prices, and some of the queue line details that we can do just to make this look a little bit more like a theme park than maybe a Renaissance fair. It's kind of on that borderline in between stage, but maybe once we add some rides and get the main street going, we'll transition from that to something a little bit different. So here is the left spire. You guys can see that in the background. It's behind the blue roof line over there. I even brought the wood trim up through the roof line itself, just so we can break up that blue tone a little bit, and I think that helps in the overall aesthetic, and it turned out okay. We need to add flower boxes, we need to add a whole bunch of other little things, lights, lanterns, and in fact I need to come up with a street lantern design for the Alpine area. Anyways, just more work that I'm assigning myself. Here is the right building. We built a lot of this on stream, pretty much this whole section, and we built this wonderful little spire as well. You do have to change up the supports for these a lot. You want to have double planks, one on each side of the windows. Windows are very weak spots for buildings, so you'll find that they heavily support those areas over everything else. Middle section can just have one. It also kind of breaks up the surface, so you have small bits showing through, more, small, and then the roof line there, and that looks nice, doesn't it? I think it does. You can get some darker wood planks going across the little roof here, just so it looks a little bit more supported and it looks like a proper floor. This door leads into this tower area, and then this door back here leads into this section. This is actually the main ticket booth area. We did wrap the roof around, and we'll be filling this in with garden areas and possible seating, and just, you know, you use a lot of greenery to kind of fill in dead space, but I want to leave that for now because next episode we will be working on this. I've laid out some of the initial path. We are doing this kind of gray stonework for the main road, flanked with kind of a red sidewalk-like effect. And this is the main path of the first main street. There's going to be a few of these. Each zone is going to basically be a self-contained little area. This, of course, is going to be, if I had to guess, probably about yay big. It might even contain a roller coaster. It might contain a flight ride, maybe two, and some height changes throughout, so that's super important. And it'll also contain the first train station, which will be pretty interesting to make. You can see the road will shift off to this direction. This is actually going to be the central road going to the rest of the park. This one is just kind of either going to be a dead end, because it's going to give us that kind of three-pronged feel, and that could look cool, or it might lead to the train station. Not quite sure how I want to do that yet. Your guys' feedback is nice to have there. Here is the blue shingled building over here, and I think when we add some flower boxes and other elements hanging off the walls, it will look a little bit better. There's a lot of vertical elements here from the shingles themselves, from the wooden supports themselves, so it does look taller than it probably normally would otherwise. I'm just really happy with the way this kind of dome turned out, partial dome with just this step effect. And there's a lot of little detail here, so you get a bunch of little ribbing effects through there. You get the click of the clock tower as well, and it is quite a nice visual from down here in the plaza. We have some new flower beds, things like that filling the space. I want to build some benches, possibly a covered area as well out here, just as a final little vertical piece. And then at that point, we'll start working on the main street. There's a lot of stuff to do back here, from ramps, little retaining walls in this first area, and then we can start kind of on the first set of buildings. Now, just a heads up and explanation, we can't really do much to the left or the right side here until we keep building. These are going to be walls that are going to be blocking the sight from those areas, and then we can't do any backstage elements back here until we have this main street kind of laid out. So everything's kind of contingent on itself. So one piece leads to the next piece, to the next piece. We have the finished ticket booth area, which is going to enable us to build the first kind of inside plaza, into Main Street, into backstage elements, into rides, into other height changes and bigger details, weenies, you name it. That's kind of how I think my work process works. So that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Your guys' feedback, of course, is necessary, so hit that like button if you want to see more Planet Coaster. Leave a comment down below on what I might want to be working on next. And until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.